Yo, 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 yo. What's going on, everybody?
Hey now.
I hope everyone's having a fantastic Thursday afternoon here in the States and Friday morning over there in
Friday
Australia
morning,
and anywhere in between.
Thursday evening, Friday morning. And for those of you who are somewhere in the past, you're welcome to. Or maybe even in the future, right? Somebody come back, watch
I
us later.
suppose. How would we
Watch.
really know unless they self-declared?
Let's send a message to the crypto time traveler for Access Alive, and then have them come back and tell us when it hits 1 million. That's when they should come back. When it hits.
I think it
Wait,
was supposed to hit 1 million already.
yeah, well, I think it actually already did hit 1 million, right? Because it's somewhere like 450 million.
Well, if time travel exists, it already existed. So
Yeah,
theoretically, yeah, it already happened.
if time travel exists, except that if since time travel isn't possible, it's just really a different reality. Whatever.
Deep Thoughts with Crispy and Axis. Welcome in, Zenith. How you doing, buddy?
I was not
Zenith-
prepared for this one, but
Zenith
glad to be here, boys.
Come on, quantum mechanics. Let's go, man.
Hey,
Let's
hey,
make
I,
just make
I've
shit
done a
up.
little bit. I did
We'll just
enough to pass Physics 2 in college, where they talked about, was it relativity and the idea that if you yourself move faster, you move through time slower. And like, at the
I
end of
hate that, man. I hate that when you're traveling, you don't age and everybody else ages around you.
Yeah.
That's why you got to like jump past that. Like we get to, in science fiction, right? If you're doing science fiction, you're like, oh, that's really inconvenient, man. It's like you want to have this whole space opera, but then you're like 30 years old and everybody you know is dead. I mean, sometimes it works. Sometimes it works.
It's true.
Right?
I operate on the law of large numbers, though, which is that if you're a person that gets annoyed by me approximating pi as 3 instead of 3.14, then you're probably also the person that thinks that if you go your entire life moving and then someone spends their entire life at rest and each of you had a watch, if you compared the watches at the end of your lives, one of them is like 4 seconds behind the other. It's like, yes, does the relativity exist? Yes. Is it noticeable and or does it matter? Absolutely not.
But how can we harness it to amplify it in one direction or the other?
Well, I think just in grander scheme of things, I think how we actually are harnessing it is by coming up with better and better technology that requires less and less power, as well as size, to the point where eventually, right, we'll just exist. Maybe that singularity is coming.
Yeah, I think I know what you're talking about.
Well, yeah. I don't want to get too detailed for Zenith. I don't want to lose them, but hey, listen. You know what it took? You know what it took? Like 15 years ago. Well, actually, like a lot longer than that. 30 years ago to power a cell phone. You need like a battery like this, dude. And now I got a cell phone. Now I got a cell phone battery like this, right? So the smaller those things get, the more possible it is to do stuff with energy. And like a lot of things they said could never happen. I mean, like you guys don't even know probably because you're like too young. But like there was a time where there was like in this argument, there's no way there'll ever be quadcopters that can carry people. Right, but you walk outside, and you see people, testing stuff. Well, I guess not outside, but you can see people testing it, and they're doing that. And they would argue that the drones couldn't exist and all this other stuff, but they all do. They all do now, and that's why Terminators exist too, and all that stuff. So we'll see.
There we go.
Well, and so I think this show is a little bit about HEX, and you could actually wrap that concept and that theory into how the financial technology is evolving and how it's evolved over time. Like an IBM computer in the 50s and 60s was like this massive machine and has the compute power of like one zillionth of the amount of compute power in your cell phone these days. And it does beg the question of are we? It's kind of obvious, I think, at this point that we're headed on a one-way track toward infinite energy and unlimited resources to the within certain bounds, obviously. Where you just basically they call it the singularity, but we're breaking through, and eventually, what I believe this ends up leading to is a point. I don't know if this is 100 years in the future or 500 years in the future, but it's a point where all energy needs are met, and money ceases to exist in the form that it is today. 100%.
Is this going to be like a Star Trek future or a Planet of the Apes future? Which one? Because both was kind of true, right?
Well, you know, human. There was conflict in both, so they're both valid.
Okay.
Yeah, the conflict friction and conflict you can't get rid of, but I think eventually energy becomes the currency because currency, just use of the English language and phonetics, like is a current that flows like water, right? Money flows like a river from one place to the next through pools, aka liquidity pools. So there's something to that, I think, where money will always flow to an endpoint. But I think the goal here is that the endpoint gets big enough so that the train can hold as many people as
So you're
possible.
thinking more like Matrix world, where our value is how much electricity we can build. Yeah.
Well, the infinite abundance and infinite energy future does exist, but I do think there are some pitfalls that could get us along the way. And I think right now, the three horsemen that are fighting for first place, we have Silicon Valley with the AI bros, where Singularity could take over. We have Elon Musk's Neuralink gets hacked, and then we end up in some Johnny Mnemonic type of movie situation.
Yeah.
And then finally, the one that I'm worried about, I think Boston Dynamics is winning right now. The Atlas robot's just going to come kick my ass. It's going to show up at my door, and it's going to kick my butt.
I like when they dance, man. I like those. Those are so cool. You know what I'm talking about? You seen the dancing video?
I've seen the dancing ones, yeah.
I don't know if it's a parody or it was really what it was doing, but that one where it's trying to like cook. They got one of the. It might not be Atlas or whatever, but the Boston Robotics robots are impressive, man. They are impressive.
I just remember seeing a video of they're doing like they're testing for the self-correction point, like if they bump into something, or in this case they had some guy with a hockey stick that was just like pushing it around. It was like, don't bully the robot. This is how it gets mad at us.
That's right. You better be nice to robots. They got long memories. That's it.
Infinite.
I see Crypto 3.142 in the chat. Just want to shout him out.
Oh, 3.142? That's like the worst of both worlds when it comes to rounding, because I'm pretty sure it goes 3.1417. So if you're already at the 2, you might as well just drop it. Or if you're there, just go for that 17, baby. Come on. With 5 significant 5 sig figs is better than 4. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. Well, I think as we're moving forward here in the whole X world, things are really weird. Let me share one thing with you real quick, right? So I'm older than you guys, right? So I was born in the 60s. So I was alive in the 70s. And this is, there have been many, what you would call like information, revolutions, right? I mean, telegraph was a big deal. The telephone was a big deal. The television was a big deal. I mean, you can go on and on with all this stuff. But damn, I was just reminded the other day, I was looking at something. I was like, when I was in like grade school and I needed to do a report or something, I could go look at my brothers and sisters' stuff from 10 or 15 years ago. And it was like all the same, right? Because the source material that they would have would be like the same encyclopedias that I would go find. It might be newer version, newer revision, but I go find a library or whatnot. And it was just kind of like, I don't know why this came across in my head. I was just thinking, how different is it today? Like people, kids are doing, doing studies, doing reports and that type of stuff. They're going to be they're looking at the internet, right? With like 10,000 different types of sources of information, and just how quickly that's changed in just 10, 20, 30 years. And so how does this all tie back to HEX? Well, I was kind of looking at it. We were talking about HEX more than once this week on different streams and whatnot. And you just keep coming back to, this idea that some people promote that HEX is dead because it's old. But then I keep coming back around in my own head, coming back around to it's brand new. And it hasn't yet came to the attention of peak. It's immutable. It does what it says it does. It appears to me to be an awesome way to base things, for like a maybe not exactly a currency, but certainly to replace certificates of deposit.
I liked on your recent stream. I liked on your recent stream with Silver how you kind of framed the whole thing as a 15-year cycle.
I know that's
I thought that was profound in some ways. Like, maybe hex is its own thing that can live and breathe on its own, and we're just waiting for the market to make that realization. And so, like, that's why you get this kind of weird price action, as well as there's other factors in there as well with the launch of pulsechain and whatnot. But yeah, expanding that time frame to that first round of 15-year stakes.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Well, obviously, I'm with you on it because that's what I was thinking, and it's like we don't talk about that, these 15-year cycles, because it's a little taboo. Because like we all kind of felt insane for even doing. I think most of us probably felt insane for doing 15-year stakes in the first place. Not everybody. Some people were on it right from the beginning. But I've been after you guys since, I don't know, April, May this year, just kind of like hammering this whole idea of the Quattro Cinco's, because yes, this is what I'm observing. I'm observing that we have this big old hex cycle that took place, and now at least it resembles a cycle where we had our ups and downs, at least for the T shares, and kind of like watching that, and now we're at this very low bottom, and something that Richard Hart always talked about is coming true. People have an opportunity to be whales. They have the opportunity to be whales in hex if they decide that they want to go into hex and lock up for 15 years. They could do it. A lot of people could do it. A lot of people did. A couple hundred, right? I think that's maybe it's a couple hundred. We got the Dolphins. I'll look real quick. But anyways, so I digress. I'm sorry to take you off track there. It's just because I like that so much. But yeah, we've got 15 whales out, 15 years now, 131 sharks, and 563 dolphins. Unfortunately, we did, rest in peace, we did lose our Poseidon.
Bummer.
Well, he's got 9.8% of all the T shares, he or she, and so dropped from the 10%. Maybe they'll come back, but they only got 6 days. I don't know if you saw me post that. It is in 2039. Speaking of time travel, it is currently you're currently staking for the day after Christmas, December 26th, 2039. So there's only 4 or 5 days, 6 days left to do any stakes in 2039. So perhaps over the next couple of days, that Poseidon will come forward and lock some more up. I don't know.
Oh, nice. I just got good news from from one of my devs that we're gonna have data on the front end for tonight's demo.
Oh.
This is maybe not something anybody really knows about, but I am going to show you guys a video here in a little bit. It relates to COM and hex. I think we have talked enough about this year about why we think COM is a good way to lever up and give people a reason to stake long, which should make hex more scarce, which should make hex go up in value quicker. And we're actively developing. When I say we, myself and Crispy's been helping actively develop a protocol that's supposed to bond to COM, to make COM more valuable, to make hex staking longer, more enticing. So I'm going to do like a little video here that had Crypto Hexplained work for me and build out like an explainer. It's been on Twitter, posted for a while, but I figured we'd show it at the end of the stream. So, but yeah, things are coming along nicely with that. And if it's successful, it should draw a lot of an economic energy into long-term hex staking.
Beautiful. Got to incentivize people to go long.
I think so. I think this idea of paying somebody money up front to get them to go long is probably valuable. I think it's, maybe just misunderstood. Like when you buy Communis, you're basically putting a vote toward marketing dollars is basically what you're doing. You're saying basically like, I'm willing to increase the value of COM so that some other player can come in and stake hex for a long time and reduce that supply and then get paid something in the process to do it.
Yeah. I've been kind of hammering that thought lately with a few people. The idea that one of the ways you could look at COM is you could either look at yourself as a client or a customer of COM, meaning it's just a regular retail user, Or you could look at it as you are a marketer for HEX. And you know how some of us were willing to put up $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 and go buy advertising through a race car or this or that, or people put a lot of money up, right? I don't know how much we've spent as a community, but that's what you would call marketing dollars, right? What did they expect to get back? What did you expect to get back if you're putting $1,000 towards a NASCAR? You're not going to get anything directly back. You're putting $1,000 up, right? That's marketing, right? What you were hoping that the marketing would improve the price of HEX. So simply stated with COM, if you're looking to market HEX, one of the things you could do is you go buy COM, right? And you buy COM as a marketer because it gives COM more value. And then somebody who's rather new to things like Zenith says, hey, wait a minute, you mean I can lock up for 15 years and get 10, 15, 20% of my value back?
Not
And
bad.
they say, yeah. So in that way, it's marketing. There's no sure bets, but anybody who sees it and then stakes for Quattro Cinco in order to get that instant rebate, yeah, that's marketing. And in fact, your money isn't the money you quote unquote put into a token like COM isn't even spent as marketing until somebody actually takes the trade and converts. And so in that way, it's kind of like, I don't know if it's 100% conversion, but in that way, it's kind of like 100% conversion, or at least a very high conversion rate. The difference, though, with of course, COM and a lot of things is that it is based on HEX, and that means it's on a 15-year cycle too. So it's got it's a long time for this game to play out, it's hard for us mere mortals, right, to kind of be watching this and be like, even think about this stuff. It's like 15 years. What the hell are you talking about? I want to go on vacation and after the first of the year or something.
I'm just looking through the comments right now. There's definitely some TA questions in here, guys. We'll cover those here in a little bit. Kind of a free flowing session today. The kind of what sparked my desire to do this stream is because I see, and I'm going to embarrass him a little bit, but I see Zenith as like one of the up and coming superstars right now with his ability to, get on camera and make high quality content.
Do you mean do you mean that like in a good way, or do you mean superstar like Saturday Night Live? Like which way you said? I think you mean it in a good way, right?
I think I mean it in a good way.
All right. No tree hugging.
I appreciate the flowers, but to Crispy's joke, I had to explain to someone. Someone mentioned me. Oh wow, this person's been on SNL for a really long time. They're probably really good. And I'm like, no, that's how you know they're not very good because they never went anywhere.
We could talk about Chris Farley, but it's a sore subject for me.
Look, all I'm saying is Shane Gillis gets fired from SNL. Shane Gillis becomes one of the largest comedians in the space. I'm just saying. Coincidence?
It's kind of like inverse Kramer.
Yeah, a little bit. I think it's funny that you say I'm an up-and-coming superstar, though, because on Sunday I spent 20 minutes dissecting S&P 500 charts just to arrive at the conclusion that elections don't really matter for market movements. And I could have just told people that up front.
Switching gears here a little bit, this is a good comment. It was brought up on Maddie's stream about the OA burning the HEX, knowing it cannot be burnt. However, if it could, wouldn't that also ruin yield since inflation is based on total supply? You want to answer that one, Crispy?
Yeah, sure. We answered it the other day too, but yeah, HEX can't be burnt. Next question. No. In terms of like HEX burning, even when we quote unquote say we burn it, remember inflation is based on ever minted HEX. So that means HEX that has been minted before, and that's how the inflation is based. So yeah, in theory, if there had been some way to burn it, like make it disappear, which you can't, I'm telling you, the contract keeps track of us, it can't, right? But if it could, then yeah, you would ruin the yield because there would be nothing to yield against.
Try to break down what you're saying. What it sounds like is there's three scenarios really. There's reality, which is we have the OA, can't be burnt, therefore we still get that 3.69% inflation. There's the what if hypothetical, which is that imagine if the OA was burnt and it did exist previously, because what you're saying is that the inflation rate is based off of the total of HEX that has ever been minted. Because the OA was minted in the past, aka the old time travel here, it means that the inflation rate would still exist at the rate as if the OA did exist, even though it does not no longer. So I guess the third situation is as if the OA never actually existed, in which case, yeah, that would mean that instead of the users experiencing 36.9% inflation, the users would just get that 3.69 inflation, because the total supply would be all that the users hold, not users plus OA.
So a lot of people probably don't understand what you just said. So maybe I should
You understand what I just said?
So we'll stick with reality, so we don't confuse it.
Okay, I like that one.
In reality, right? It's a mutable contract, so it can't be changed, right? Can't be changed. So it does not allow you to remove hex from existence. It would have to have a function to let you remove hex from existence. So that being the case, right? It's kind of has, think of it as like a little counter where it's counting the supply. As hex is minted, that number that actually gets minted goes up. And so what does that mean? How does it get minted? People stake hex, and when they stake hex, when they end their stake, they get their original hex back plus whatever has been distributed to those stakes. And so that portion is newly minted. Principal was already minted, right? So little abacus guy over here on the contract already knows you put 100,000 hex out there, and now it's saying you staked 100,000, you got 50,000 as rewards. It mints an additional 50,000, updates its records, right? And so in that way, we always have an increasing hex payout over time, because 369 times ever minted is what gets distributed to all of the stakers in terms of inflation. And so that's why I said that you can't burn it. You can send it to a dead address, and I think that's kind of what you were getting at. You can send it somewhere where nobody can control it, but it's still part of the equation. Doesn't change.
I kind of want to make a graph, just draw it. Like, you know how you look at the estimated share rate over time, and it creates a parabolic advance. The ever minted hex is going to also create a parabolic advance in the same way, assuming there's more hex to base that 3.69% off of.
Yeah. I think on very, very long time frames, it begins to look parabolic. It kind of looks more linear on the shorter time frames. So we look like at 15 years, it looks linear. But I think when you look at it, and I've really been thinking about this, I need to maybe do some models that are 30 and 45 years, be able to capture 3 cycles, because then it starts looking like a hockey stick. But a lot of that information now, that really becomes much, much harder to guess. It's like a real guessing game. Because when I look at 15 years, I have the benefit of knowing what everybody has done to date for the next 15 years. Right? I know it's going to change, but I can see what they've staked. Right? And so I know that I can back calculate based on whatever models I want to apply, what the numbers will be for every single day, for every single stake, and make assumptions to build a 15-year, type of a prophecy, which is what I've been doing, right? I mean, I can come up with multiple models, and we have. What I don't know, because they haven't done it yet, I don't know what they're going to do tomorrow or for the next 15 years. So you see the difference? Like I can see what the behavior's been that affects the next 15 years, but I can't, I have to guess at what the behavior would be more. I still kind of guess anyways when I'm doing a forecast, but for the future, man, I really don't know what's going to happen in 10 years. So I could do things like, hey, let me pretend like we do with Bitcoin. It's going to do the same thing that Bitcoin did, right? Or, so hex, the next 15 years of hex will look like the last 15 years of hex, and superimpose that. But it becomes, a much more difficult thing.
Do you have like a projected ever minted hex? Based on if everybody were to unstake on time?
Yeah, about 90 million in 15 years.
90 billion in 15 years.
No, 90 million per day.
Oh, 90 million per day.
Yeah, per day. That's where I come up with the 3,000, 2,000, 3,000 hex per T-share payouts. Because if we had like nobody staking, then it would be very, very high, right? But that means your APR is going to go through the moon. So if the APR goes
Interesting.
crazy,
32 billion per year. 32 billion per year. That just triggered a thought about ink. That ink is inflating at about 32 million per year. So ink and hex are like basically three decimal places apart. So one's in the billions, one's in the millions, but still interesting, that relationship there.
The relationship, but also remember with hex, when we say it's inflating, that's not all realized on the day that it's paid out. It gets spread against all the stakers. So they have to end their stakes for that to actually be realized.
So there's going to be 328.5 billion by year 15 at 32 billion per year, meaning we're going to see basically 4x. No, I'm sorry. We're going to see, like almost like a 4x the user supply. So there's going to be about 500 billion. So the OA at currently only has like, I think 500 billion or something, 500 and some billion. And so that means that the total user supply should start to try to eclipse, or they would be equal if there was no penalties paid. So, but they in this situation, they would almost be equal at year 15. Interesting.
Well, yeah, no, I can't speak to what may have happened with all the with all the sacrifice hex that's out there. But if you think about it the way you just described, right, and we see this with the T-shares, the OA loses its power over hex and controlling the hex over years, right? Because just like you say, the inflation, right? Just in general, staking is not staking, so it only has the stakes that it did. So think of it as kind of like, I don't know if this is the intent, but I kind of think of it like guardrails or training wheels, right? So it's there to kind of keep everything on the straight and narrow for 15 years, 10 to 15 years, but then the community takes over, right? That's why when we're looking at 15 years out, the OA is not part of the calculation out there. Those are all, that's us. It's the community that went out there and did that staking. The OA doesn't even exist out there other than having their own, hex that'll be in wallets. And we can't discount that they'll do some sort of adjustment in the future, but.
Zenith, what do you think about that idea of the OA getting edged out over time? And do you think the OA might take, actions to stay in the game?
I was trying to do the math in my head. You mentioned the idea that at one point the non-OA hex is going to actually equal, if not start to be bigger than OA hex. So it's like, how long would something like that take? Theoretically, you could probably just do the math and call it like 37% for how many years equals probably like 4x on the initial 10% of hex, because that would make you exactly equal, so a 50-50 supply. But I mean, Crispy and I kind of talked about this on Tuesday. The idea is like, what is the purpose of the OA? And what does the OA do from a mentality for people getting in or not getting in? If you believe that the OA is not going anywhere and that those tokens are not getting touched, then it pretty much is just a stabilizing force. If you are constantly in fear of the OA dumping on you, then the answer is that this probably isn't the project for you. But at the same time, it's like, it's possible to use the OA for certain ways that might benefit the rest of the holders, but a lot of that might be, it would be actions that are kind of like in a negative interest to itself in order to have positive interest for other people. Because with crypto, you can realistically do what? Like 3 or 4 things? You can send, you can buy, you can sell, or you can stake. So which of those 4 actions in what amount benefits who? That's what you got to ask yourself.
Yeah, we saw the OA act like this in the past with the big payday, where it's, it removed a lot of the liabilities around that time period, and which opened up the runway for the 10,000x. It was just less dumpable hex in the market. So
perfect.
And it's also doing things like, to your point, staking and not ending those stakes and just letting them bleed out, but then people step in and good account them for the OA. And so then those are just like resting away somewhere, locked away, untouched. And that increases the APY for everybody else in the system.
Correct. Yeah. Because if the OA staked, then the OA would be part of the people eligible for the HEX rewards, which means that instead of having that 90% that is the OA set aside that will not collect rewards, it means that we'd probably see less yield. So the OA stepping in and doing something like that might be detrimental to other users because they'd be eating into some of the possible reward for the days that it's staked. But I don't know, there might be a way to do it that incentivizes everybody.
I'm going to go take this, put these blinds down here so I don't get blinded here. 1 second.
Do it. Maddie was not wrong on the Tuesday stream, though. HEX really is one of the best game theory practices, or prisoner's dilemmas, if you will, that you can get out there. Just with the nature of like who's in, who's out, how long you in for, where are you out, that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's pretty interesting, because that's why I was saying, of course, our discussion on Tuesday feeds into my thinking over the last couple of days. I'm just thinking about HEX and how things are all working with that. But this whole idea that it's immutable code and you can look at the future supply, and we have like a really good idea of what's going to happen, right? I mean, we have people going to do their thing, so people will interact with it. But it is like a giant cruise ship, though. I mean, in that, you want to nudge it in a direction, sure, price you can change pretty quickly, but everything else about it, you can kind of make it start going in the direction you want it to go in, but it takes a lot of work and a long time, and it self-corrects, right? Like I'll tell you things that a lot of us thought that turned out to not be true at all, is that, only giant stakes change to the rates, right? Giant stakes will change the rates. And turns out that's exactly true. Almost every stake could change the rate. Depends on the timing, Or I'll constantly get this question because people get excited, and it's okay. I mean, people get excited. They'll be like, "Oh man, did you see this giant stake somebody just put in? What's it going to do to the T-share rate?" And I'm like, "Man, I don't know. Every time I see them, they never do anything. They might move it a couple. It's not so much about like what the shorties are doing. It's about what the people long did, right? So where's this all leading for me? So when I'm talking about things like the T-share rates, I'm looking at the what the T-shares are going to do based on the stakes that were made, right? So I've already told you that the big changes aren't coming from little tiny stakes; they're coming from longer stakes, and predominantly, if they're bigger, they'll probably affect it more. So really coming from long stakes. Well, how do you get a long stake that changes the share rate? Well, it had to be put in a long time ago, right? You see the connection? Like you can't have a long stake that ends on time unless it's served all its time. And so what does that mean? That means we have these data points for 15 years, because people are staking all the way 15 years, that are showing what likely the rates are going to be in the future. They'll be adjusted up and down by behavior, but we're not going to be off by 180 degrees. We're going to be off by a couple degrees, right? In either direction. Maybe things are really high or really low, but we're headed in the same relative direction all the time, because we know what the stakes have been doing. Anyways, it sets us up for being able to do a lot of predictive modeling that's pretty accurate.
I've been thinking about time and length since our talk on Tuesday, and
that's my wife talks about that all the time.
Yeah.
Of course.
I made a tweet.
God bless her heart.
I made a tweet after doing some math, and I think I scared everyone away because it has 0 interaction, and it starts off with "for Hexicans that like math." So, fun fact: apparently, no one likes math around here. But
I can support that comment. Yeah.
Yeah, I compared it and I was looking at the bonuses. So Hex has the 2 staking bonuses. We have bigger pays better and we have longer pays better. You can max out the bigger pays better bonus and it'll give you an additional 10%. To do that though, you have to stake 150 million Hex. That is a lot. I did the math at current price of like 1.48 cents. That means that you need to spend $2.2 million of Hex in a single stake to max that bonus. As opposed to if you do it through the longer pays better example, what it actually comes out to is that to hit that 10% bonus, you only need to stake for 183 days, which is not even, it was like just a hair over a half year. And we're talking about Quattro Cinco stakes here, which is 15 years. So if you max out the Quattro Cinco stake by the math, I think my math might be slightly off because on the formula provided through the Hex contract, what it came out to was 305%. However, if you actually go look at a stake that you're about to put in, it only will triple instead of go to that extra 0.5. So,
the thumb rule is 20% a year, right? So you'll get 20% more T shares for every year that you stake. So if you go out 1 year, you get 20% more than if you do 1 day. 40% for 2 years, that type of thing. I think that's the right number.
I look at that and from the system design standpoint, trying to do Crypto Kool-Aid proud here, talk about systems, which is that the intention of this system is that will you be rewarded if you are a bigger player? Yeah, absolutely. But you're going to be a lot more rewarded if you're a patient player. Time is much more important than size.
If you're big and long, you're really rewarded. Right.
Yeah, then you're just reaping all the benefits.
Yeah. But here's the thing too. Now there's a guy, I forget, Axis and I talked to this guy for a while. I can't remember his handle on Telegram right at the moment. I'm sorry, dude. But anyways, he was bringing up this idea that the guys who were doing the short stakes for lots of Hex were beating the system, right? Quote unquote beating the system, and so that bigger pay is better bonus is like a whale attractor, right? And so yes, you want them to be in long, of course, but then they eat up a lot more of the yield being in long than if they're in short. So why do I call it a whale attractor? Well, you can't keep, it doesn't matter who you are, you're not going to be able to get the same number of T shares for staking the same number of days. Even if you stake all of your rewards and all of the principal, it's just mathematically not possible. However, the guys who do get the 10%, the extra 10% because they went to 150 million or come close to it, they can get really, really close to maintaining their T-shirts. Now, why would that be a good thing? This is why I call it a whale attractor. Well, if I'm a whale and I'm doing that, it means I would potentially put less pressure on the system by selling any of the Hex off. I'd be really super interested in, hey, geez, how do I do these 30-day 100 million Hex stakes and just do them over and over and over again and earn my 7.5% APY? APR? Why wouldn't I do that? Right, rather than trying to pull it all and sell it on the market. So anyways, that's where that bigger pay is better really does come in. But always remember that same new share calculation gets done every time. This new share rate calculation gets done, and it applies it to everybody, right? So it's all the same that way.
Let's get into some of these starred questions here.
Superstar.
Hey, Axis, can you give us your 2025 top price predictions? I'd rather not.
I heard a good one the other day, 2 cent pulse. I was like, oh, that was you. Was that you? Might have been you saying that. I don't know, Superstar. Somebody was saying it the other day, 2 cent pulse. I was like, give me some 2 cent pulse. So you know who I heard it from? I don't know whose prediction it was, but it was on Crypto Ewok.
Mm-hmm.
I was listening to this guy. So yeah, I'm trying to save you, Axis, so you don't have to give an answer.
Yeah, 1 to 2 cent pulse isn't out of the question. So much of this relies on an order of things happening. So there's the lowest bull market top is so much farther away from the best outcome. It's like, do you really even does it really matter what I say in that regard? I mean, you just saw Hex do a 5x in like 30 days. So if that's any inclination of what's possible, that was done with like a little bit of adoption. Like we saw one dude come in with 450K and soak up over 60 million Hex. And he looks to be staking on 50-day rollers. So, you know, how many times can that happen before, you know, you're onboarding 100,000 Hex stakers a month, and coins are just getting peeled off the market at such a fast rate that the supply is outstripping the demand, like starts doing like 2 to 1, 4 to 1, 8. And then at that point, it's like literally impossible for me to figure out where the price could go in those kinds of circumstances. So, but I mean, if you just, go ahead.
Yeah. I'm just nodding my head and agreeing with you, right? I mean, the price can go as high as people want to make it go or let it go.
Yeah.
See, there's a difference between we start talking about those of us who will be more fuddy about it. Will be like, oh yeah, but wait a minute, you have all this Hex and it's all circulating, and people going to sell it. Okay, they might, right? But that's not what's on the market. What's on the market is what's actually in the liquidity pools, right? And so that's what you're referring to, is these prices could go insane, just like any coin or token. When the liquidity is going down and people are pumping value in, it goes up harder and faster.
And the reason why people pull their LP down is because they don't want to lose their coins.
Yeah. Or they want it to go up harder and faster.
You know, and you know, what came first, the chicken or the egg? I mean, it's one of those situations where people buy because people are buying, because people are buying, because people are buying. And instead of it being people are selling because people are selling, because people are selling, you know, it's one of those types of situations. And that's crypto, right? That's things that have no, and like quote unquote, no intrinsic value. That's how Veblen goods work. When they're in demand, they can go to prices that just don't make sense. And when people stop wanting them, they can crash to prices that just don't make sense. Like Hex down minus 99.97% doesn't make sense to me. I mean, I understand how we got here because of a triple bear market and a whole new chain with 5 assets that had to be, you know, equalized, and homeostasis had to be found somewhere. And so it took this huge battering, but like, you know,
market psychology sometimes can almost seem paradoxical, because it's one of those things that like green candles attract more people to buy. But what caused the green candles in the first place? People buying. And then same with the other thing. It's like, why do people sell? Because they're worried that they're going to lose value, so they sell now into a red candle, which incentivizes even more people to cut their losses and sell. But at the end of the day, people only have so much like capital that they can deploy. So there is an end to it. But like you said, like, sometimes if it goes so well, you can get to prices that don't make sense. And if enough people just, I don't know, get a hair up their butt and sell everything, it can also just drop to a level that doesn't make sense. And a large part of that is something you've talked about a lot, which is liquidity pools. I know that we just had a great conversation there about like inflation of the entire Hex total supply, but the entire Hex supply is not the thing that affects the price. The things that affects price is the Hex on the market available through the liquidity pools or whatever means you can get it.
I agree with you.
You don't have to affect the whole price. You just have to affect enough of it.
Yeah.
And running out of buyers, that's another big one. It's not so much that you have too many sellers as much as you just ran out of buyers, or AKA there's no one else adopting it for now. That's another key component. And so then what happens is this is what sets up for the wild swing in the other direction, where there's just too much Hex on the market. So just a month ago, there was 2.3 billion Hex on the market for sale, and half of it got scooped up in this move.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people listening to us right now, they might think we're just talking about Hex. Pretty much everything we just said, except for the t-shirt stuff, this applies to any token. And so we have a question that's in the chat when we get to it about about recent items built on Hex. But those are the types of dynamics that affect any token. This is why when you see a token that comes out, you'll see some of these things just disappear and just go down forever or whatever, because I don't want to say any of these are exactly vampire attacks. I don't mean it negatively like that. But when something is built that certain Hex holders have, well, they get some sort of amount of it. What are they going to do with it? Now, different ones of these have different options, but Like the HEX rewards or the LHEX, it's just given to the people. What do they do with it? It's like forever pressure downwards. So the hope maybe is that people will buy it. Like for some reason they'll hold it and buy it. But why would they hold it and buy it? I mean, so that means because they're going to speculate on it, right? And that's why I have LHEX. I'm speculating that the price will go up in the future. Now it is tied to Pulse but also tied to some stables, so it will likely go up in dollar value. But again, the same type of thing comes in. If a bunch of people get tired of it and they don't want it, they stop buying it or they sell it, the price just goes down, right? And it's just the same thing with all these types of
Yeah, so many guys have made things built on. Well, I shouldn't say it, not enough of us have built on HEX, in an effective way. But for those of us that have built on HEX, most of them have failed to add value and help HEX get moving again. And that there's a debate around that.
Yeah, listen, I'm guilty of doing something like that too, right? I mean, I created my token just because I wanted to create a token. There was no purpose behind it. I mean, it's easy to do. It takes you 10 seconds to do it. And then the question is, what do you do with it, right? But I think you're right. There's a lot of tokens like that. And by the way, on the list here is HEX One, which by the way has a whole series of dynamics behind it. It isn't just something that gets rewarded. And then you have another one out there called Actuator, which allows you to borrow against HSIs. And people listening to this chat, you got to go do your own research on these things, right? Because I can't tell you whether they're safe or not. But I like the idea. Without more research, anyways, I like the idea that people are building on HEX.
Yeah, I do too.
Because it is driving that demand for HEX.
True. Axis, I think you're right when it comes to the idea that not enough people have built projects or good projects, but the only pushback I have to that is I think there are some very good projects that people have made, especially HEX based. I think maybe the other half of the equation that just wasn't really met was the mass adoption or enough adoption that it's going to start having outsized effects and can kind of get its own snowball rolling. It's kind of the idea that like everything really is a Ponzi at the end of the day, and you have to get enough energy flowing initially to keep people to keep buying in perpetually, so that there's always that supply of buyers instead of just forever down pressure. So I think they're fantastic projects, especially ones built on HEX and in the pulse chain space. I just don't know if we quite have that critical mass yet for the projects to really help bolster everything else.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, there's no doubt in my mind that there's a use case for tokenized T-shares or a use case for transportable stakes, just from the simple aspect of custody. So like if a HEX staker wants to transfer custody of something to another player, I mean, that exists now. I think it's just not valued properly because HEX is being improperly valued. So because what I've learned is that for any of these systems that are built on HEX to work, HEX needs to get up and going on its own first, ultimately. And that has a lot to that's supportive of your statements there about needing some sort of liquidity injection in a mass scale, or which should incite interest and bring new users into the system. And once you get that flow of money into the chain and into HEX, then all those other things can start to have value too.
I want to see if you agree with me on this, you guys. So there's a couple of tokens out there. Some were mentioned here, like Savant is out there, HEX Rewards. There's a couple of these tokens where people made the tokens, and the idea is LHEX is another one, to reward people who went into HEX, met the commitments, yada yada, right? And so again, I want to just specify, I'm not talking down about them. I recognize that they're out there, and what the purpose is to give value back to people. That's why I hold some of them, because I'm looking to support it. But here's the thing: it isn't. Let me just throw it to you this way: I don't feel like it's a net negative for the people receiving the tokens, but I do think that it's the people who I like the customized cigars. I got a cigar right here. I do think that the you have to recognize that the people put up liquidity, whether they know it or not, they are marketing that token, much like we talk about COM. So like with LHEX, Liquid Hex, right? I did not get any Liquid Hex allocated, even though I'm a big, strong hex staker. Why? Because I did emergency end stakes before big payday, so I was excluded. The only way I could get LHEX was to buy it on the market. So I bought some on the market. And then I decided to put some LP up. So I put some LP up. But that is a donation of my value, right? Because it's me giving it a price by tying my tokens to it. And I don't mean Hexfire per se, but I mean a token with this pulse or whatever. And the presumption is because now that's tied more with these other assets, as the pump goes through, the value goes up, right? And so it benefits everybody who participated. But in my head, it it's not net negative for the people who receive it, but the market making is not. You're not making value off the market making, right? I don't know if that made sense to you, Axis.
Everything you say makes sense to me if I'm listening.
Yeah, all right.
Well,
Bum.
so this is my thoughts on LHEX and some of these other ones. Is like, yeah, I think you basically could have ended it with "I made a donation."
I did. I made a donation. All right.
Stamp it right
Too many
there.
words. Too many words. All right, guys. Forget the last minute.
Well, no. Hold on. I want to really rub it in now and massage it in. Look, some of these.
Hey, listen, I read an article today about P. Diddy. Please don't rub anything on me. Please.
All right, we don't want to get
locked
out of YouTube.
I'm up with current events. I mean, I'm just saying I read an article.
Shoot, I basically have to Zenith has to keep me up to date. I don't pay attention to anything anymore. Okay, hold on. This LHEX thing, and just in general, when it comes to these, like, when people build on hex in the future, like, think about for a second the people that you may be including or excluding, because I've seen that be a coin killer before. In either direction, if you exclude the wrong people aren't going to care about it.
Oh yeah.
If you include the wrong people are going to destroy your chart. So it's a fine balance. And the good news is that if you're bullish on LHEX, you can get you could basically buy the supply, right? You just got to put a little bit of liquidity or a little bit of action on the chart, and you could probably convince everyone else to nuke their bag and buy their bags up and make your own market. But beyond that, yeah,
that is true. That is true with actually with all the ones that were mentioned. You can do that if you're gonna take that project on.
Yeah, Hedron's tougher because there's so many units of it out there that could be dumped on you. Icosa is way easier because it's more limited, and it requires Hedron auctions to mint new ones. And COM is, I think, a sweet setup. I like COM a lot. It's probably my favorite hex derivative. I also think, like, the Hex 1 system, that could actually be quite successful, especially I know they're working on a V2, and so hopefully that works out well. I haven't given it enough time yet, but we were in early on in terms of vetting that contract, and we definitely had a hand in helping make that thing come to fruition. And so, yeah, I want those guys to be successful too. I was hoping that maybe we could go into this we have some other a really juicy question here that I want to talk about this. I think this would be really fun to hash out. Is our chain really as good as we think, or is this just an obsessed cultish behavior?
Yes.
Solana network went down. Hex users unaffected.
Pulsechain users unaffected.
Pulsechain users unaffected. Is our chain really as good as we think it is, or is it just an obsessed cultish behavior? All right, so what's the difference between those two?
Well, let's start first. I don't know what how everybody else thinks it is, how good it is, but yes, it's as good as I think it is. Yes. But the obsessed cultish behavior would be, I would think, Zenith, being blind to the idea that there are problems.
Correct. That's definitely something I think people will get turned off by very quickly, is if legitimate questions and problems are either shooed away or actively discouraged. As far as is the chain as good as we think it is, by the numbers, I think the chain runs fantastically. I like the structure. I like the gas fees. I like all the projects on it. I think that there are good fundamentals. The bones are good bones. But what's the rest of it? Is it obsessed cultish behavior? Is it very motivated and incentivized people? Is it passionate people? I would argue, yeah, it is. And I think there are real problems that people are trying to solve. The on-ramp, off-ramp question has been a big one for a while. I like what the Coast team is doing over there, and I wish them all the success in the world, and I hope more people either work with them or find ways to be healthy competitors in a way that promotes more good on and off ramps. As far as the community stuff goes, I have been on record saying that I think that Richard Hart has made great crypto products. Do I think he's automatically the best in the world at everything else he does? No, absolutely not. It's foolish to think so. It's foolish to think that just because someone has a PhD in math that they're also a great artist for some reason, or that they're a political expert. It's like, the answer is no. You're good at what you're good at. Richard Hart's very good at making crypto projects, and I think he did a relatively very good job at marketing. He took a unique twist that has ups and downs, and unfortunately one of the cons is I think it has the ability to create cultish behavior that can turn certain people off and scare away other people from diving into this rabbit hole that is crypto memes and the culture and everything around it. But at the same time, the man streams so many hours and put out a lot of good content, so it's hard to argue. There's pros and cons either way.
Yeah, I kind of argue that your cons are actually pros in disguise. So, but yeah. I mean, I acknowledge it. I think a reasonable, like, adult-minded person understands a lot more about this than others, and particularly those people with critical thinking skills who are able to separate their own emotion from this. Because like you mentioned, the cultish behavior. You know what? Nothing's going to be successful unless there's cultish behavior. In my opinion, right? There has to be cultish behavior for it to be, for things to go the way we want them to go. Does that mean that I need to be cultish? I need to understand it. I mean, maybe I do need to be cultish. I don't know, but I don't feel like I'm culty. Like I'm not drinking Kool-Aid, dude. So I don't care what you say, right? So I mean, I don't care what Richard comes out and says, right? He says, "Hey, I'm shipping you a box of Kool-Aid. Drink it." I'm not drinking it, right? But will I listen to his advice and think about all the things he's talked about? Goddamn, I will, because yeah, okay, fringe stuff. He's not 100% right all the time, but he's pretty close, right? I mean, so his critical thinking skills that he has brought forward to people, I think, has been very useful for us. But I'm not really coming up against you. I'm just saying, yeah, I hear you, but it's like it's like a Russian doll, one of those little dolls that you open up and you open up and you open up and you keep getting to another layer. What do they call this? I forget what they're called, but you know what I mean? Those little
The
Russian
Russian
dolls.
nesting dolls.
Yeah, the nesting dolls. I mean, it's just within and within. It's like the whole thing where, like, at the very surface, people being like, it's a scam, right? Well, I don't know, man. Maybe nobody ever watched the video that I watched where he said, "Hey, we're going to design the front end. We're going to make it look like a scam, so people who are susceptible to scams will join this really good thing and not get scammed." I mean, right? I mean, I actually listened to that and believed what he was saying, because I really felt that he really felt that way about it, and I still think he does feel that way about it.
Yeah, well, let's think about it. So when you throw out the word cult and scam, what it refers to is probably some sort of level of commitment that is beyond rationality, or some sort of blindness to larger issues. I can understand the argument that when it comes to being a crypto investor, you should be looking at the larger picture and not just look at, does this chain have good technicals, but does this chain have good technicals and value and ability to make money in comparison to all of its direct competitors, aka the rest of the market.
Nailed it.
Yeah.
That's exactly where I was going to go with this. Is forget about your opinions, leave them at the door. This is a technical wonder. It's Ethereum, but it's way cheaper. And so the meta game is completely changed. And so forget about the cult, even though that's a plus in my opinion. Apple's a cult. Video game
Yeah, dude,
followers are
it
cultists.
is.
Like
It is.
there's like the age old question of, I remember, dude, I was playing pro video games when that was unpopular. And there was always like the PlayStation guys, the Xbox guys, and the Nintendo guys. And everyone had a side. It was very rare to find a person that liked all of them. But that's back when the video game industry was just tiny, like tiny, 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 and disrespected. And that's where pulsechain is today, is tiny and disrespected. And that doesn't make it a bad, that's opportunities staring you in the face. From a technical level, I'm telling you that $109 million on the bridge is enough money on the bridge for people to make meaningful amounts of money on a regular basis, either through farming or through trading or creating a project. There's an infinite number of ways. Because the transaction fees are so cheap now, you can actually test out new ways of tokenomics, new mechanics,
100%.
and it's just that part from a technical level is sound, and people can have their opinions about the OA wallets and their influence on the market and things of that nature. But that's a separate topic, because BNB, for example, Binance Smart Chain, for example, that's also centrally controlled as well, economically speaking. And like the ton coin, that ton chain, that is mostly controlled by a small cohort of people. Anything that's successful, I mean, look, are you interested in Tesla stock and Starlink and stuff, if Elon dies tomorrow? Or do you have the same level of interest? Or do you like, they're strong founders, strong figureheads that stand behind something, makes it more powerful and gives it a foundation to blossom from. And so yeah, this is the problem, I think, is that some people view it as a turnoff for people, and that's one view. But from a technical standpoint, if you can make money here and the tech is rock solid and doesn't go down, that's a good foundation. And so yeah, I just think that this chain is as good as it can be, based on it coming from Ethereum. So it did not need to innovate completely to be a good and useful chain.
Can I say something unhelpful? I
Is
really
it all
like
going to zero?
Pulse and Pulse Chain, but there's only Hex. There is no second best. Just want to lay that out there, and we can not
All
address
right,
it.
Michael Saylor. There's
I
no
like.
second
I'm gonna
best.
start. I'm gonna start doing.
There is no
that.
second best.
I want somebody to clip me saying that. I'll even like make myself sound like him, and just because really I was listening to who was I listening to? I was listening to a really cool podcast. It was having to do with finances and focusing on things and whatnot. Anyways, it was a really good series. A lot of us have done this in the past where we concentrate on something that's winner. You let a winner run and you let it get really big, and then you look at diversification later. But it seems like every time I turn around, I want to diversify before something takes off, and unfortunately, that means that I'm spreading my energy against a whole bunch of things, some of which will fail. Right? That's kind of like a VC approach too. But if you vet one and it really does perform for you very well, that might be the one horse that you ride across the finish line. And I think Axe has actually been talking about this part of it. Then as you're winning, then you're able to split small amounts off to go try these other new things without damaging your boat, you know?
Yeah, to pull a little Alex Ramosi here, the idea is that you only need to get rich once, and then after that, the name of the game is to keep building and maintain as opposed to massive growth. If you can find that one winner and really go all in on it to get to the point that you hit that like escape velocity, so to speak, then at that point, to maintain that escape velocity, you can start to diversify. Because what is diversity going to do? It's going to lessen your gains, but it's also going to lessen your losses on average. If everything is jacked up, everything's jacked up. Can't really do much about that. But yeah, like you said, there is a lot of validity to having that conviction and staying focused on either a single project, a single token, or a single like area that you're focusing on. I mean, crypto as a whole, I think, has gotten to the point where it's so massive that you can't just say I'm focusing on crypto, because now you're focusing on like all of it. But if you can pick a few good chains, I think that fits into what you're saying. And as far as Hex being the best one, yeah, Hex was the first. Hex was the initial intention, and Richard has very publicly stated that everything else was built to make Hex better. So why not build? Why not just focus on the one that that's designed to be improved?
Yeah,
I understand the argument for sure.
No hate towards anything else at all.
But this is good. This is good. I want to bring up another token that's like competing for some of that same share of interest, and that's Titan X. Like, because Titan X has actually had quite a run in the last few months. I think it's up like really? 8 or 9x against ETH or something like that off the base. And I was looking through the liquidity pools. I think it did like $12 million of volume over the last like week or two. I think it was over the last week it did $12 million of volume on its main pool. And that pool, I can't remember how much is in that pool right now. I think it was like 4 million. Maybe I'm wrong, 4 or 5 million. But then I looked at Hex, and its Hex has got like $35 million of volume, you know, over 2x what Titan X did in the last week. And I think that says everything you need to hear. Is just like, you know, Hex is way alive and has a lot of volume and a lot of liquidity, and it's just gearing up. It's just getting started and getting ready for the bull run.
True.
Yeah, that was a key point. And there's another question here I wanted to bring up. This is a really, really good one. I know we've been kind of flip-flopping here, but this is in regards to Hex derivatives and the COM token having a lot of units. I don't know if you guys have an opinion on this necessarily, but I know I do on this idea of that COM units are too high. Understand that a quadrillion units of COM is probably only like $15,000 or $20,000 right now, which may seem like a lot, but in the short term, there's only going to be like 140 quads out there, so the market cap's actually really, really low. So in terms of where the price is at today, they're just don't be scared of the number of quads out there. Just consider the actual total market cap of those quads.
The human mind the human mind is very well accustomed to dealing with things that are in the tens or hundreds. The second you start dealing with anything smaller than like 0.1 or bigger than like 1,000, or realistically probably 10,000, that's where it's hard to understand scale. So like what you said, what is it? A quadrillion COM is probably like $2,000.
Quad right now is 20K.
A quad is 20K. Okay, by that token, then that means that a trillion COM is $20, and a billion COM is 0.2 of a penny, if I'm not mistaken. So
that's right. I think it's 2 cents.
Yeah. I'm personally not a fan of tokens that are either like so small or so large that it's hard to like really do quick math with it. I think there's very much a reason why you see a lot of the top 100 coins, or maybe even top 200 coins, their price is probably somewhere between 1 penny and $100. It's just easy to do quick math with unit volume and the amount that you want to get. So does the math work out? Yes. Are we bad at math? Also, yes.
Yeah, but remember, COM was made for a very specific purpose: to market Hex.
For marketing, though, if you're going to market something, though, I have to be able to entice you in some way, shape, or form. One of the ways you can do that is by functionality. Another is maybe through action or even price. So if I'm trying to talk to you in terms of price, it almost might seem so nebulous that it might even be not great marketing. So is there a way to like simplify it? Like how do we...
and I think the target for this is is, as I was mentioning earlier, a very small number of people who are big players in Hex. They don't need to care about everything you're talking about. I get you that popular appeal to COM, for sure. What you're talking about makes sense, but they don't need to be appealed to that way. If they're willing to push the COM price up to advertise Hex, that's all they need to do is go buy more COM.
Fair
and
enough.
pump the price up. So that's what I'm getting at, marketing dollars. When you're talking about understanding the token, I'm trying to trade it. Yeah, I'm with you, man. I can't count that many zeros. I can't do it.
Well, it's just understanding value.
Yeah. But here's the thing: is again, it was built not to speculate on itself, even though that does happen, but to market hex, because just simply buying it markets hex.
Yeah, and I mean, if you like you said, price action. I agree. By the way, I agree on the whole unit bias thing, because I made a token that's like $22,000 a token right now, and people used to tell me that I couldn't do it, but it's there, and there's a market there, and there's like $1 million of liquidity backing that on its own, and yeah, that's a lot. That's a big number. People are mostly daunted by it and don't want to play that game. So one way of solving for that is you can make that unit transferable into more units at a better price that people are more receptive to. And if that then increases adoption because people are being paid to onboard into that system, and it's bonded to this other thing, COM, that has a hard time being understood from a unit bias perspective, then it's just going to get a free ride up because some market maker or some group of intellectuals are going to help that process pump the COM price, which is going to pump the onboardability of long-term staking commitments. So I think it kind of just like you can build this web of things that can be built to strengthen a narrative and create interest is enough. If someone just simply says like, look, this thing did 190x, and then it just went and did another 5.3x in pulse terms. If you knew that over the last just over the last 100 days, you could have 5x your pulse stack by buying this coin at the base, continues to make new higher price floors. Is that enough to get at least the power users interested in buying that token to help push the price up, to help improve the price of the instant rebate, to help more people want to stake hex long, to help the whole system perpetuate higher and higher value storage and creation? It's something worth fighting for. Regardless of if if the majority don't want to think about the units thing. You don't have to, because you're just basically getting this for free if you just click a couple buttons on a web page. So I think that's the thing, is driving traffic to the web page and making sure that they know that that's there. And once it gets integrated into Hex Scout, it should make that process more seamless, just in the same way you get a pop-up that says you have free Hedron to mint, and you just click that button and do that transaction. If once COM is there, this system is going to start to get some traction, I believe.
Axis, a pop-up saying I have free anything sounds like a scam.
Well, we saw how well the the world's largest free airdrop worked. So
true.
That story has not been closed yet, my friend. That's still coming.
Still young.
It's still coming along. It's still young. I agree with you that it didn't turn out the way I thought it might have turned out, but I think that the story isn't done being written. And and truth be told, Ray, I bought a number of PRCs with the idea, or ERCs at the time, with the idea that I get the PRCs to be able to set up liquidity. And basically, I found that when I did that, of course, I got deeply taken advantage of, deeply, right? There's just like totally like ripped up, but it taught me a lot of things about the possibilities. And so here's the thing: is from the outside, if you're outside Pulse Chain, golden opportunity right now. If you had gotten copies, to come into Pulse Chain, breathe life into something, and get your quote unquote free value for sure. And in some ways, they could really build that up, to better than even what they've got on Ethereum side. In terms of price and value and everything. And I mean, it's certainly cheaper to do the transactions, track more people, but it requires the community of that token to come, because really they're the best ones to benefit from that. If you weren't part of that community over on Pulse Chain side, you have a lot of risk if you're trying to cause that token to take off. I'll give you an example. I have the Zenith, I have the Zenith token copy, right? We got the Zenith token copy. Well, there's 10,000 Zenith holders on ETH. They haven't figured out about Pulse Chain yet. So I can go out into Pulse Chain and say, oh, look at this, man. it's like only a tenth of a tenth of a tenth percent in liquidity, I start buying it. Right, I start buying up Zenith. I've done this a couple times, testing different theories. So I buy the Zenith token up, and it goes up to parity. It doubles parity. It's 3 times parity, right? Well, because I bought it, right? But I'm still only part of a small group. And then Zenith actually wakes up, comes over the chain, and sells it all, and takes the value and leaves. Right? I mean, so for me to do it, it's not it's not worthwhile for me directly without, there's a lot of time and strategy involved with it, probably in tranches to get involved with it. But if you're the guy on the outside that already owns all this, man, or owns a whole bunch of it, you have so much opportunity to really breathe life into pulse chain. So anyways, that's what I'm thinking, Axis.
How do you guys want to feel about doing some TA on HEX?
We can do some TA. I think we're at an interesting point.
Yeah, we've already been on here for an hour and 20 minutes.
Yeah, we're coming up on my hour and a half cutoff. So let's get this TA in. Here's HEX against the dollar. Just a couple of things that are just shooting me in the face here is the 70 on the RSI has been hit. This is historically a level that HEX on the ETH side got rejected from. So, I mean, just right on cue here on the weekly chart. It's coming back down. At the same time, we're starting to get a decay in bullish MACD bars. Not by much, but it's going to start to round out a little bit. And on the stochastic, momentum is now crossed down, and we're looking for downside action. You need to see both the orange and the blue lines cross below the 80 level, and then momentum will actually really start to slow down, and you could see a decline. So then I guess the next question is, what are some of our key levels here on the weekly chart? Obvious key levels to the upside is the candle body highs from the first few weeks. And I would say, where do we get rejected from here? Roughly. So about 1.8 cents, which was hard resistance for us back in January and February. We just could not flip that as support. So that's a clear rejection level for now. And then on the downside, you could say these candle body closes down here around 006 is like a key level that we'd want to see support from, around 006 to 007. So this is kind of what I'm looking at in terms of downside possibilities. And I guess if we zoom in a little bit here and run a fib on this thing, we can look for some, we'll zoom in maybe on like see what daily gives us anything. I'm going to go down to a 4-hour to try to find some structure here. That 618 was a clear support level here on September 19th. And there was a resumption off that level. So you got your low, you get your high, you got your higher low, higher high, higher low on that support on the 618, which is calling HEX's name right now. And then just a series of higher highs and higher lows all the way up to the top. And unfortunately, we were unable to flip that as support there around 1.5 cents. And now it has become resistance. And we actually are potentially going to break this wick low here, which would mean a new low would be forming, a lower low. And then if that happens, we're going to see downside on HEX. And I'd say that there's probably a magnet somewhere around the 618 right down there at 6 to 7/10 of a cent, probably 7/10 of a cent. So that's kind of your short-term pullback area to look for. If we can't close candles above, I would say 1.16 cents. Thoughts, feelings?
If you go out to the daily chart, there's actually there's a little bit of confirmation of that level that we're currently at right now. Mm-hmm. So what I'm looking at is the 19th of April and the 9th of April. Those 2 days, they have kind of like wick tops that are around the area we're at right now. I originally thought that I had my fibs drawn the other way, so the 1 was at the top, 0 at the bottom. So my 0.618 level was around 1.32 cents. Mm-hmm. That's a typical pullback, but we kind of blew through that one already, which leads me to believe it wasn't as strong as I thought. So, yeah, For me, the support level that I have right now is like 1.1 cent, based on those 2 dates that I mentioned, and then after that, there's not much else.
Mm-mm. I really only care about us keeping these levels here. This is like the main area that I want to see us hold above, is like basically
0.7.
0.7 of a cent. Yeah, I want to see that hold. So it's everything in between is like whatever to me.
I would agree.
You start closing below there though, and we got bigger problems. But you know, what an amazing run up for HEX in the short term. It kind of showed the power of what's possible. And then if we look at this in the ratio against Pulse, because remember, Pulse is probably influencing the USD price of HEX to some degree. So to get rid of the noise and to see more clear signal on that, you can pull up just the Pulse, the HEX priced in Pulse. And so far so good over here on this one. I did this thing where I drew a fib extension from this local low here to this candle body close high to this local low here, and it projected out this. Right now we're trying to flip that 1618 extension as support. If that holds, HEX could actually get back up and get moving, and that kind of is supported in the USD chart, where we would like to see us some support here at 1.1. So if it could find support against 1.1, that would imply that HEX is going to continue to overperform its pulse price as well, and then we're probably headed up here to around 400 to 1 and in pretty short order. So HEX looks great. The price action's solid all the way around. No signs of nothing worrisome yet, and I could see some bid coming in right now here against Pulse as well. So yeah, I'm happy with the HEX price action. It's been very nice to get some green for a change, and for such an extended period of time.
I'm just curious to see what the volume looks like in the near future, because very notably over the last month, we've had a notable increase in volume.
Mm-hmm.
So if that keeps up, then we could definitely see price action keep going either direction. But if it starts to decline, we might settle into a new trading range, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. $80 million of volume from the bottom to the high there on October 3rd. That's pretty solid. No joke.
People
This is on every day. And how have we done on the pullback then? How much volume? 22 million. So 25% of that volume to the downside, and we've still done a pretty good job of holding these levels. So we're still up 127% against PLS, totaling $103 million of volume since September 9th. That's awesome. So good job, Hexicans. Keep up the good work.
True. I know this might be more anecdotal, but I like looking at Dex Screener as well, because the toolbar on the right, it gives you a good visual representation over that 24-hour period of number of buys, number of sells, dollar amount of buys, dollar amount of sells, and the amount of buyers and amount of sellers. Looking at the difference between those three numbers can give you an idea of who is moving the price. Is it a few people making big moves in one direction, or is it a lot of individual transactions? And what I've been observing over the last month is that it seems that to be a lot of larger transactions from a smaller number of people, which is that you could call it whales splashing around or just large-sized purchases, but at the end of the day, I think it's been more of a few specific dedicated players making moves as opposed to just a massive aggregate of a lot of individuals. That's at least what I've been observing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can give you some anecdotal review of that. Just watching I'm pretty tied into what's happening with the volume on the chain on a daily basis. And as soon as we stopped seeing the pumpage from this, things went pretty deathly quiet.
True.
And so I adhere to the concept that we probably the people who were going to sell have been shook. They've already been shook out. This is the price has been brought up by a small number of people or entities buying. And now we've got a little bit of cool off, right? Because it's natural, right? It went up pretty fast. It was pretty glorious run up. Now it's a natural pullback to see we have more sellers. You want to sell, get out, right? And then pumpage returns, I hope.
Yeah, this could easily turn into like an ascending triangle, something like this, and then a break and resumption off that level. And if you do build some sort of consolidation structure up here, watch out, because I mean that's gonna not just go to the two. This things could go all the way up here. Now I want to curb my enthusiasm a little bit here, but that is a possibility if you do build
Please don't.
consolidation up here. And by the way, you know, we're obviously sentiment here is a lot different than what we had back in the beginning. But if you just like think about this simply, you know, this would be like where, like what Zenith was saying about volumes and whatnot. Like this would, a trading range up here isn't out of the question either. And it could look a couple different ways, right? It could look a couple different ways. But the point is that you could create sideways
Could be
price
a lot of
action
ways.
and flip this, previous highs against pulse's support as because it's early enough in the run that there's still a cohort of people that want to eat up all the supply in this range before sending it higher. It's actually super inefficient to just run this all the way up to here and then, you know, all the liabilities that come in, you just end up losing money in the process as a market maker. So what would take it up here would be some consolidation structure and build up the FOMO, and then the market would take it there. You know, new players would come in and feel like they're missing out and push this thing up there. So
Yeah, I mean, people should be honest. How many of you, when it started going up, went and bought? You know, it's not that it's a bad idea. It's
not a
just
bad thing, especially
it's
at
not
this
a bad
point.
thing. It's just like, you know, you didn't like it when it was 5 times cheaper.
Yeah. Well,
You know, or maybe you did like it and you didn't. You know,
that's a lesson for another day, I think, Chris.
Yeah.
I know we didn't see it exactly when we were looking at the HEX versus USD chart, but on the HEX versus Pulse chart, do you think there's a case to make for a 5-wave Elliott five-wave Elliott sequence going on? Because that looks like the top of wave 3 potentially right there.
Yeah, sure. That's exactly right. I would agree. Yeah. Then this would be your general range would be that 400, 425, somewhere in this general range. And you could draw fibs a couple different ways here too. I don't want to spend too much more time on it, but
fair enough.
But yeah, definitely that's not out of the question either. So let's see what lasting thoughts. Any lasting thoughts, you guys, before we wrap?
Ask yourself, is the price of HEX cheap now, as opposed to, do I think it's going to go up? Do I think it's going to go down? My personal opinion, I still think HEX is pretty cheap right now. So that's an indication on what I'm doing.
Got you. Yeah, but yeah. People, I think it is fairly cheap.
I forgot to bring this up. Maybe it'll have something to say about your comment about cheap HEX.
There is no second best.
Well, in terms of RH assets and what's cheap right now, I saw HEX in third place for a while in terms of market cap, but it is now in first place for market cap. And I mean, it's beating the rest by a decent margin. It's beating Inc by 10x. So you tell me what the best buy is, right? You tell me what the best buy is. I'm not saying HEX can't sustain these levels. I'm just saying these other ones probably need to catch up.
Inc is the best buy. But
that's right.
What about EHEX?
Yeah, I mean, I'm an EHEX. You know, I like EHEX. I own EHEX.
I got me some EHEX too.
I think there's a play to be had there. It's a little more. It's more challenging of a hold than these other ones, but the opportunity could be as good or greater in some cases. So depending on how you want to look at it.
Yeah, I think it's a great play, but. You know, listen, I already have EX, right? So I'm not over there accumulating more of it right at the moment. I mean, I did all my accumulation early in the cycle, but I think I keep going back to Axis's analysis of comparing it to ETH Classic. You know, like we were talking the other night, we were talking about HEX Classic and just how that performs. So yeah, hey, listen, it's tied to liquidity. Go look at the liquidity, man. The thing's tied, right? So it's you say, well, it's a little lighter than everything else. Okay, well, what does that mean? Well, it's lighter. It's not going to move up as fast initially, but it could overshoot and follow and be like waved all over the system. So for speculation, it's awesome for that. And plus, as a staker, right, then I just need to be thinking more of myself about timing and what I'm doing with my EX when it comes out. People have been asking me that in my chats. You know, like, what do you do with it? And I put it to work. I mean, I don't always. I mean, I have a little bag right now, but put it to work.
Zenith, sir.
I mean, as far as the idea that people will trade anything under the sun as long as it has the semblance of a pulse, yes, they will. Yes. And there is potential to make money. But to go back to a point that Crispy made earlier, it's a lot about just thinking about economic energy. If there is a copy on pulsechain, it takes economic energy to either put in order to get something going, or you're just removing the only existing economic energy that there is. So I do love me some low liquidity stuff because of the ability to pump hard and fast, but at the same time, it's not exactly my entire strategy over here. So take it for what you will.
Well, thank you very much, gentlemen.
Have we reached the zenith of this episode?
We have. I hope to have you both back in the not too distant future. And I'm going to close out you guys with a video, and then we'll do some outros, and we'll see you guys on the next one.
You're just going to close with the video? You're not going to tell people about it first?
We're just we're gonna let it rip.
It's alive.
It's alive. All right, guys. Enjoy this video, and we'll see you guys next week for some more streams. Keep your eyes peeled to the X for more
thunderbolts and lightning.
Later.
Very, very frightening.
Created as a unique education tool, Axis helps students analyze blockchain data, study prices, and understand how money flows through markets. It was designed to empower and educate people within the pulsechain ecosystem. Members of Axis Alive use the token to reward each other for providing valuable information, with incentives often distributed in small quantities to maintain a limited community supply. This approach has led to significant price appreciation and the formation of long-term sustainable price floors, as shown by the all-time price chart. In this video, I'll introduce you to the Alive rebate system, which is designed to reward participation in the Axis Alive ecosystem. Inspired by and aimed at demonstrating the power of the HEX and Communist fusion, the Alive rebate system functions as an automatic participation reward machine. Alive increases the scarcity of Axis and creates additional opportunities and utility for both market makers and participants. I'll explain everything you need to know about this protocol in a short and easy to understand video. However, please keep in mind that there's no financial advice on this channel. The Alive protocol operates on the pulsechain network and uses a unique lock and burn mechanism based on commitments. It features a two-token system. The Axis token, initially issued with a supply of 1 million tokens that can only decrease over time, and the Alive token, which starts at 0 and is created only when users commit Axis tokens to the system. This mechanism makes Axis more scarce by reducing its availability on the market and encourages users to take advantage of arbitrage opportunities, which helps stabilize and potentially increase the prices of both the Axis and Alive tokens. In this way, the market dynamics of Axis and Alive are interlinked, with their combined value reflecting the overall health of the system. When using the protocol, users must sign a smart contract committing a specified number of Axis tokens for a period ranging from 1 to 2,920 days. Once the contract is sealed, half of the Axis is burned to the dead address and permanently removed from circulation. The remaining half is locked in the protocol for the entire duration of the contract, as determined by the user, and returned at the end of the term. In exchange for increasing the scarcity of Axis, users are rewarded with Alive tokens based on the number of Axis burned and the length of their commitment. Rewards are distributed in 2 stages based on the base payout. Initially, 20% of the total reward is given at the time of commitment, referred to as the start payout. The remaining 80% is paid at the end of the commitment period, known as the end payout. Over time, this ratio shifts. The more Axis tokens are burned within the protocol, the smaller the start payout becomes and the larger the end payout grows for all existing commitments. This means that early participants benefit from higher start payouts when more Axis is still available on the market, whereas as more Axis is burned, everyone with existing commitments in the system sees an increase in their end payouts. This incentivizes those already invested to attract new participants, as it rewards everyone with larger end payouts proportional to overall adoption. At the end of the commitment period, users can claim their Axis and Alive tokens at any time without facing penalties. However, if users break their commitment before it's complete, they will incur penalties. Specifically, if a commitment is broken before reaching 50% maturity, users forfeit both their locked Axis and the Alive end payout. This rule helps protect the system's value from potential hackers during the first half of the commitment. After surpassing the 50% mark, users forfeit only the Alive end payout, and their Axis is unlocked and returned early. Alive is the evolved form of Axis, achieved through a process that requires time and commitment. The protocol operates as a decentralized and unchangeable system, managed by users who interact with its contracts using their own private keys. It is designed to encourage community involvement, increase the scarcity of the Axis token, and drive continuous growth for the protocol. As a result, various strategies may emerge, such as setting up commitment ladders, trading between Axis and Alive, hoarding Alive to encourage further adoption through immediate benefits and profitability for new users, or simply accumulating more Axis as it becomes scarcer over time. Before engaging with this protocol, be sure to expand your knowledge by asking questions in the public Telegram room. Feel free to share your thoughts and any strategies you're considering in the comments below. If you found this video useful, please like and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.